Thank you very, very much. It's my pleasure to introduce my dear friend and partner, Loretta Lynch, who's a recipient of this year's Legal Momentum Aiming High Award. I also want to congratulate my dear friends Debbie Perlman and Kathy Rumler for their very well-deserved recognitions, as well as Susan Lindenauer for her distinguished career in service of justice, and who is someone I've admired since I was a summer associate at Paul Weiss in 1983 and had the privilege at the ripe age of 23 of working for you and really looking up to you. So thank you for everything you have done. So today marks the 22nd Legal Momentum Aiming High Award event, and I'm proud to say that I've attended every one of them from the beginning. I'm also proud that my law firm has contributed now more than $1 million to Legal Momentum over the years to support its critically important mission and advocacy. And so many of my close friends and clients are among the 100 plus Aiming High Award honorees and are here today. It's been such a privilege to watch the growth of Legal Momentum and its predecessor organizations over the past several decades and to revel in the success of this luncheon. But let me turn now to my dear friend, Loretta Lynch. Very few individuals need no introduction, but Loretta is in that very select group. You all know her, and you all know her resume. Loretta's accomplishments are legendary and make the rest of us look like slackers. Harvard College with honors, Harvard Law School with honors, the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of New York, not once, but twice, nominated by President Clinton and by President Obama. Attorney General of the United States, nominated by President Obama, the first woman of color ever to hold that position. 3 presidential appointments. And it's not just that Loretta has served our country. She has served our nation with distinction, with purpose, and with courage. Throughout her distinguished career in public service, Loretta has always taken on the causes that mattered most, supporting the rule of law, safeguarding individual liberties, and protecting our democracy against any and all threats. Loretta Lynch has always been a profile in courage. I'm privileged to be law partners with Loretta. In many ways, we have come full circle. We first met during orientation at Harvard Law School in August 1981. I was anxious, Loretta was calm. I was insecure, Loretta was secure. I was immature, Loretta was mature. But as our Harvard 1L picture book shows, and I did bring our archival material, we did have one thing in common. We both had lots and lots and lots of 1980s style hair. Like so many, I looked up to Loretta throughout our 3 years in Cambridge, and I closely followed her career ever since, as she moved purposefully from private law practice to government, back to private law practice, and then returning to the highest level of government, running our Justice Department. I cannot begin to tell you how rewarding it was when Loretta told me a few years ago that she would join Paul Weiss as a partner. But I can tell you that being Loretta Lynch's law partner is an even greater honor than I imagined. She is the perfect partner. She is brilliant beyond words, strategic, committed, passionate, collegial, welcoming, thoughtful, and she continues each and every day to fight for justice, to fight for causes that truly matter, and to fight to improve our world and to improve our communities. But more than anything, Loretta is inspirational. She has inspired me since I first met her more than 41 years ago, and she hasn't stopped. And you're about to see and hear for yourselves what makes Loretta Lynch so special. It is my distinct privilege and honor to present my partner, my friend, my hero, Loretta Lynch, with Legal Momentum's Aiming High Award.
Oh, thank you. Thank you all so much for that warm welcome. Thank you, Brad. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. It's always good to see that, in fact, we did have the same hairstyle 41 years ago. But thank you for your friendship and your support over the years, both then and now. Who would have thought that we would find our way back to each other? So it is such an honor to be here with all of you today. It's great, frankly, just to be together, I think. You know, things are opening up, but we're all still careful about going out. So the events that we choose to come to are really meaningful. They really are important. And so it means so much to me that we're all here together. And it's my hope that we'll all leave rejuvenated, not just by the events and the wonderful honorees with whom I'm so privileged to share the stage, but just by the chance to be together again. I hope that you find as much pleasure in that as I have. So I also want to thank not just Brad, but my entire Paul Weiss family, many of whom are here today, for their support and the growing friendships I've made in the firm over the years. But of course, my deepest thanks go to my partner of the past 15 years, the person who's been my support in so many of my efforts, who knows me better than I know myself and understands probably better than I do my desire to do good in this world. And that's my husband, Steve Hargrove, who's here with me today. So I want to thank you for this wonderful award. But as with everything that I have done in life, I did not get here alone. No one comes to this stage or even to this profession just on their own strength. Like I know so many here tonight, I was particularly inspired by my family. My own grandfather, who was a minister and a sharecropper in rural North Carolina in the first half of the last century. My grandfather had a third-grade education. He had 8 children, had no money, and because he didn't own any land, he was dependent, completely dependent, on the white farmers who would hire him and his sons, including my father, for their livelihood. But he always believed in reaching out to others. He believed in doing what was right, no matter the cost, no matter the risk. So when people in that small town, that rural community in North Carolina in the 1930s fell into, as my grandfather used to say, the clutches of the law, he would help them. They would turn to him for help. And sometimes that help was money, sometimes it was support, and sometimes it was to help them literally leave the state. Because if you were poor and black in rural North Carolina in the 1930s, there was no justice for you on a dark country road or even in the bright light of day. And so sometimes my grandfather would get involved at that level. And my father remembers, as a young boy, sometimes the sheriff coming to their house, the wooden house that my grandfather and his oldest son had built with their own hands, coming to the house to look for someone who was in trouble. And my grandfather was helping him out by hiding him under the floorboards of that very house. And the sheriff would ask my grandfather, he would say, "Gus," my grandfather's name was Augustus Claude Lynch. He would say, "Gus, have you seen so-and-so?" And my grandfather would say, "Well, I haven't seen him lately." But he always believed that things would get better. He did. He was a man of tremendous faith. He believed his children were the equal to anyone, and he believed that justice would and could be achieved even if it didn't happen in his lifetime. I guess you could say he stepped out on faith. I've also always been so inspired by my own father, that young boy who watched all those activities. When my father was a young minister in Greensboro, North Carolina, in the early 1960s, he opened the basement of his church to the young students from A&T University, including a young Jesse Jackson, who were leading the sit-ins at Greensboro's lunch counters, along with the NAACP. They held their planning meetings there. They planned the sit-ins that later expanded into the marches, that later became part of the overall movement. And in fact, my father was one of only 2 ministers who made their churches available for these meetings. And it wasn't because the religious community did not support the civil rights cause, but it was because they had all met and they had decided that given the inherent danger of those efforts, they would limit it to just those 2. And they asked which 2 men would step up and take on that risk and take on that challenge. And my father could do nothing else but to step up. And see, we often forget, I think sometimes, about just the uncertainty of the civil rights movement. You look back on the wonderful films that we have, and it looks like it's inevitable. We all realize how terrible things were and change comes. But in those days, no one knew if they were going to be successful or not. And really, who would have thought? If you said, we're going to take down the entire legal apartheid system of this country. Yes, well, how are you going to do it? We're going to go into a lunch counter and we're going to sit down. Nobody would have believed that. And yet the faith of my father and those students and the people who met in that church basement made it happen. And he used to take me to those meetings. I would ride on his shoulders. It was my favorite place to be as a toddler. He would take me and my older brother to those meetings, not because we were old enough to remember them. We weren't. We were very young. But he wanted us to be around that energy. He wanted us to see young people in action. He wanted us to see people who were refusing to accept the second-class citizenship that their own country tried to force upon them. That faith has always inspired me. And of course, my greatest inspiration was probably my own mother. My mother also grew up in a small town in rural North Carolina, but she knew that education was the way out of that particular life, and she pinned her hopes on college. It was completely unclear if she'd ever get to go, because as much as the prices changed, even then, even a few $100s might have been was equivalent to a fortune back then. So she worked part-time jobs, she saved her money, and she would tell me sometimes that she remembers vividly after church, the older people in her community would come up to her and they would press like a dime or a quarter in her hand because the whole community was behind her. So she knew that education was her way out, and she was also determined that her children would have different choices. So she did everything she could. And one summer, in the summer before she went to college, she even picked cotton to make money. North Carolina's a rural state. That's where the jobs were. And, despite what you see in the movies, some of these older movies, picking cotton is hard work. Cotton is soft, yes, but the bolls are sharp, and they can slice your fingers to ribbon, and the picking is done in the heat of the day, in the latest part of the summer and early fall, and you're bent over with this sack on your back trying to make this weight, and she's trying to pick enough to make this money. And it wasn't ultimately for her. And I remember when she told me this story when I was a child about all the things that she had done. And I remember that I turned up my nose, as only a 12-year-old daughter can do, and I said to her, ugh, why would you ever pick cotton? And she looked at me and said, so that you would never have to. And I never have. I never did. I never did. So all of that faith, all of that inspiration is what brings me to stand before you today. And of course, they are with me. I'm not alone. And so it gives me incredible honor to accept this award in the name of all of those who've gone before me, all of those whose faith in justice has never flagged, even when it was denied unto them. And as an example of that faith, I'm here to tell you, if the little boy who saw his father hide the neighbor under the floorboards can turn around and see his daughter become the 83rd Attorney General of the United States, we can do anything. We can conquer anything. Their faith inspires me now, and it has always pushed me to try and work to make real the promise of America, especially for those who all too often only feel the burdens of America. There's too many people like that. And so, to share that goal with all of you here, with the wonderful work done by Legal Momentum, makes this honor priceless. So thank you again so very, very much.